everybody. Welcome to another episode of Reverse the Verse Live. This week, a special game dev episode. We've got the one, the only, if you're familiar with the program, he needs no introduction, but we're going to do it anyway, Character Creative Director, Mr. Josh Herman. Josh,
Hello.
how you doing, man?
Great.
Now, if you've never watched a game dev special before, that's where we have someone, usually Josh Herman, occasionally it's Jeremiah Lee, whatnot. They come in and they create something live with input from the viewers watching from wherever you're watching. And in the past, we've done a number of creatures. Mm-hmm. They've worked out to varying degrees of success.
Sure.
I'm not going to bother to relive those right now because it's a wonder that my job survived them. This time, though, 2019, turning over a new leaf. We're actually not going to create a creature.
No.
What are we doing today, Josh?
We're going to make a helmet.
We're going to make a helmet?
Yeah, so we're going to do something more in line with what we've been doing, but I wanted to also give a little bit of something extra, so we're going to make a Banu helmet today.
A Banu helmet?
Yeah. So
okay.
I have already got loaded up our model of the Banu.
Jump right into it.
So we've kind of got this starting point here. This is, we've shown some of this stuff before with some of our previous concept art. So this is a concept model. It's not a production model. This is basically, what we work off of to start generating ideas, start conversations, and implement feedback. So I figured it'd be fun to see what we could do with that. So I've loaded up a sphere here.
Well, we're done already.
Yeah, done. And this is it. This
right,
is
join
actually
us
the
next
end.
Week.
We can do a little one of these kinds of things, and we are complete. What I'm actually going to do is just start with a sphere. Whenever we start sculpting stuff, you usually start from a primitive. So cubes, spheres.
What you're saying is the guy who did the Spaceball helmets didn't work very hard.
Didn't go too far down the choices, yeah. I'm using some clip curve brushes here. So the clip curve basically takes this line and actually just clips it, as you would imagine. And I can turn on some features here like transparency just to kind of get some initial shapes. So we're just going to really roughly, I guess, block this out.
Now, it probably goes without saying, but we're going to say it anyway. The Banus are not humans.
No.
We've got lots of armors in the Star Citizen game already. Plenty more on the way. Lots of clothing stuff, but they're all terrestrial. They're all human based. Mm-hmm. Lorville, ArcCorp. We've got some Terra stuff, UEE fashions, shipjackers. Mm-hmm. What we know the human style guides pretty well at this point.
Sure.
What kind of considerations do you have to, for lack of a better word, consider when doing a Banu helmet?
Some of it's just their culture. So like what kind of things they pay attention to, especially when it comes to like breathing apparatuses or shapes, or maybe they have a specific style that they like. Or that they're more accustomed to, or things like that. So obviously you also have different head shapes. So their head shape is different than a human's head shape. It's similar, but it's got some other key features. So is that something that we want to try to hide, or is this something we don't want to try to emphasize with the design? So we could pretty quickly and easily start saying if we want to keep this sort of Mohawky vibe, we can kind of run with that, and I'll just start more aggressively sculpting on this, and we'll just start figuring out some shapes.
I guess right off the bat, you have to decide whether you want them to be identifiable as Banu or not.
Yeah.
Could a helmet be used to obscure
Sure.
not just their personal identity, but their species identity?
Yeah, I think they could, especially if it's big enough.
But then you have to wonder, if it's a culturally significant helmet, maybe, so then they may not want to obscure their species. They'd want to celebrate their species, let people know that this is a Banu, easily identifiable.
Sorry, just playing with some projection settings here. So this is a tool within ZBrush, which is the program we're using that lets you basically create a new mesh based on your existing mesh for you to sculpt on, so it's never going to be, exactly the same. So I'm kind of liking the idea of creating a different shape. So maybe something that's maybe a sort of a bulbous helmet, like in the front. It's probably a little too, something maybe it's more for like explorers, not a combat thing. So maybe this.
It's not to say that there can't be Banu combat specialists,
Sure.
but we haven't heard a lot about Banu in combat.
Yeah, they don't. It's not their forte from everything we know about them, right? So we're just going to pull some of this down.
Put bunny ears? No. Make it an invisible helmet. Hey, we're done.
That's the easiest part, actually. And another thing I start to kind of do when I'm blocking this out is defining where, like, the visor is. So is this something that's going to have a visor that's, when you start looking through it, where his head is, make sure this is enabled, is like where he's actually going to be looking through. So is this, something we want that maybe can have like a big open-faced thing here? I kind of like the idea of it being almost, we've had some of these types of helmets for humans before, where it's very, like almost the top is hidden. So we could actually kind of preview that.
Now, it seems like there wouldn't be a functional purpose to having a visor at the top of your head like that.
No, this is more of like one of these kind of things where we'll be able to have a visor or a glass piece that you would be able to see through, like the canopy of it. But I'm kind of looking for, with this, I'm kind of looking for what that shape could be and why they would need it to be a certain shape, or, how do you kind of play? You need so much extra headroom here. So changing the shape of the helmet, they might have a very unique look to their helmets. This might be something that you can tell from a distance is them.
Does the horn have any particular significance that we might consider something like letting the horn protrude through the helmet?
Breathe or something?
Not like somebody in the chat brought up the way the cone heads would touch cones or whatever. Do the Banus do Banu have any kind of functionality, cultural significance to the
Like a
horns?
significance to that?
Do they touch horns? Would you want to be able to expose the horn easily without having to take off the entire helmet?
To be honest, I don't really know. That's definitely a good cultural question. Oh, I kind of like this little shape we have in the back that just appeared. So once I start blocking out the overall shape, you'll notice I'm spinning around a lot. I'm trying to see it from all different angles, and I'm trying to view that it's going to, feel, like a shape that's appealing from all views, not just from one view. So I'm trying to make sure that from the front right now, it feels a lot like a cone head, whereas I kind of like the profile view. It's got an interesting look where it's got a lot of room for him, but it's also fairly tight. And maybe this is in the back is where some of the electronics are stored. But I do kind of want to make the front a little more interesting because it's basically just flat.
Right now, obviously, you're experimenting with aesthetics more than function.
Yeah.
At some point, I imagine we have to consider how the heck he puts this thing on.
Yeah. Putting helmets on is always a challenging thing. Even in movies, a lot of the helmets you see don't actually fit the actors when they put them on. They'll end up making multiple pieces, and then they'll attach it basically to the actor's head. So for example, like if it's a really tight helmet, they might put a line or a series of lines like here, and then this part of the helmet would come off, and it basically clamshells over the actor's head.
Right.
Even some of the stuff like in movies like Interstellar, like the helmets in Interstellar are so incredibly small that they don't actually fit on his head, on any of the actors' heads, as like a classic astronaut helmet.
Right.
So things we got to figure out when it comes to the functionality of it for these characters is, that button's not working. I'm going to assign a new hotkey for a brush. There it is.
Going back to the function, some of these things don't exactly make sense for how they get it on. You see a lot of Marvel movies lately have gone to it's just a button and the helmet builds over.
Yeah, it's just so easy, right? It's like kind of one of those, we have this problem, and a lot of that stuff is built out of necessity for the script, actually. So when you see something like, we want to immediately get into an action scene, but they need to go fly in space or they need to do something, rather than spending the quick suit up sequence time or whatever, it just turns into what if we just make it appear? You know, what if we, how can we make it appear? So those kind of conversations are pretty common, and you know, we need this to go on very quickly.
Yeah.
And it is just kind of an easy thing. So right now I'm defining essentially a glass shape here. With glass, you do need to be kind of careful with it because certain shapes will create highlights in the model that will be really distracting. And especially if any of you guys are cosplay or costuming fans, the more complicated the glass is on the outside or the visual appeal, the harder it is to see out of as well.
Mirror him. Me? Okay. He's on my mic. My mic is shifted.
And while he works on his mic, yeah, what I was saying was basically some of the.
Is it better now? I have no idea. Okay.
It's all scratchy.
It's all scratchy.
Uh-oh.
All right.
I'll take care of this.
You go, Josh.
So yeah, like as the more complicated shapes you have on glass, the harder it is to see out of them. Especially if you add like certain types of shapes like, that's way too aggressive, but if there's like a hard seam in it, so you see this in movies like Tron, or even some of our helmets have this, but if this was all glass, this is actually incredibly like refractive from the inside, and it makes it really difficult to look out of. So a lot of those stuntmen that use those helmets are straight up heroes because it would almost never work.
What about the?
Yeah, we'll start talking about how you put it on soon, though.
Yeah. What about the size of the Banu horn? Is obviously we haven't seen many Banu. Is the horn something that would change size between Banus? Do they?
I think it would. It's definitely something we're playing with. You know, a lot of the concepts that we've been showing are essentially, you know, whenever you start designing a race, it's like you do one first. You know, it's hard to say. You know, even when you look at humans, you're not making. If somebody were to draw, you know, one picture for what a human looks like, you would only get one picture of one person. So this is sort of the snapshot of this is where we think one, or what we think one Banu would look like. It's not always about, you know, trying to define the entirety of the species. So right now, I think it would probably range in shape, size, color. You know, we could do all different kinds of things with it that might make it more appealing or different. Kind of like the idea of maybe there's like this shelf that this like juts into.
So the auto mod is having a field day with everybody's horny comments.
Oh, good.
In the chat.
That's wonderful.
Good job, everybody.
I'm
Make
glad
auto mod work.
I'm glad we can continue to contribute to Happy Hour Fridays, as they used to be called, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Game Dev Friday?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're new here and you've never seen Josh Herman do this before, you can. I'm sure somebody in the chat will have links for you. You can check out such a previous hits as the crotch spider.
You may have seen me in. Yeah.
What was the Simpsons? You might remember me from such Happy Hour game devs as Crotch Spider, Crotch Dog.
Yeah.
What was the third? We did a spider. We did a Vandal Dog. Crotch Whale. And
all incredibly successful endeavors. Yeah. So I'm getting some shapes in here, and you'll see that one of the things that I like to do is I work slowly at the base level. So I'm not spending a lot of time adding detail. What I'm doing when I'm kind of sketching this stuff out is essentially just defining areas that I think could be separate panels. Maybe this is a cushioned area here, so I'm already starting to kind of play with that. I don't know what will happen if this goes away. Yeah, we'll keep that on. And I've worked a little bit on the overall shape here, and I still think that there needs to be a little bit more in the front view.
Yes, for
Trying to
those
get kind of like a diamond shape.
For those asking, this is ZBrush, is the name of this program.
Yes.
It's never ceases to amaze me.
It's like the industry standard sculpting tool. basically. So I'm kind of liking this. Typically, whenever we do helmets, a lot of the, a common theme to do a helmet or a common theme to do a lot of costume stuff is to make the character more heroic. And so that normally means, big jaw, small, other types of features. And something I'm kind of liking about this is that it's kind of lacking that look, which can help set it apart from being, so.
Yeah, what we know about the Banus are they're, migrant species of traders. Not. We know that the Banu don't have a huge reverence for history.
Yes.
And heroic deeds tend to lend themselves to.
Yeah, exactly.
To history. So I think it would make sense that if you didn't particularly put an emphasis on the value of historical significance, heroic deeds may not interest a culture like that, because what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's going to remember it.
Yeah. So I think I've got an overall shape that I'm kind of liking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a little bit of detail to it. I always just save, just in case, especially as we're working live.
Yeah, we never have technical problems with this stuff at
We've never
all.
once had a technical problem.
The authentication server was not down 5 minutes before we went live either.
So what I like to do is duplicate these items so that I always have one as a backup. I do this both as a backup and I also do it for like a previous iteration. So as I'm working on something, if eventually I just don't like it, or I find that it gets boring, or it feels like it lost something in the initial sketch, I can go back to it. So this helps me do that a lot. So I'm turning on some features here. This is called lazy mouse. Essentially, this lets you you'll see there's a little red line there. It makes it so that when I draw, you can see my cursor's kind of going all over the place here. That red line's going crazy, but that doesn't affect the stroke. And so what we can do is do some pretty clean lines, much easier. And this is why I wait for a while to kind of get some of those initial shapes done, because I can go in and I can add detail and I can polish things quickly, but the time to get the initial shapes can take a lot longer if you're trying to also balance that.
Now, we're probably a little early in this at the moment, but we know that the Banu, from what we've seen of ships like the Merchantman and the Defender,
Sure.
Have a very organic look
Yes.
To their technologies. So the thing that I'm noticing you're already doing is there aren't a lot of hard edges, like 45-degree angles, things that wouldn't occur in nature. Anyway,
Sure.
everything that you're doing right now is a very curved, a very flowing style, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at organic stuff or you use a lot of reference from nature, you can see that occasionally, but especially in animals or one of my, a very common thing, especially for general artists, is to look at like anatomy, human anatomy, especially is where you start. We were talking before about comic book movies and stuff before the show started, and a huge inspiration, I think, for a lot of people is comic books. And when you look at and you start drawing the human figure, there's not a lot of those hard lines just in general, but there's a different type of line, which is an insertion line. So that's basically where two muscles would meet. There is a separation line, but it's very natural looking rather than like a 45-degree line. So that's kind of what I'm actually playing with here is we've got some softer shapes that have lines, but they're meeting each other in a way that's more of one side is kind of easing into that angle and one side is not.
And it's not that you can't have hard lines in nature.
No.
Crystals occur in
Yeah, of course.
nature, and crystals are full of hard lines, 45-degree angles, stuff like that.
So what I'm doing now is basically from what we had before, and I can toggle back and forth between these, which makes a good example. So this is the shape I had before. I added some detail to it, and I've been cutting in those lines. So all that stuff I was basically doing, you could treat it like a gesture drawing. I'm just refining it.
Typhoon, he is using a Wacom tablet. Show him your pen.
This is a Wacom 5 or 6 or something. I don't know which one this is.
Yeah.
A Pro.
Yeah. Don't let the fact that the module in the program is called Lazy Mouse let you think that he's using a mouse.
Oh, yeah. You can. I have tried to sculpt with a mouse before. It's very difficult. The best thing about the pen is it's more of a natural pen stroke. It's more akin to like drawing, right? Whereas if you're drawing with a mouse, it's a lot like drawing with a bar of soap, which I think is really difficult. Or chalk.
Drawing with a bar of soap.
Yeah, not so easy. What I'm doing here is I'm basically tucking away, I'm creating a little space that we could maybe create like a little reveal. So as it rotates around the back, maybe there's some sort of like tech hub in here. And this is where all the junk that makes the helmet function sits. Especially because we created such a large space back here. This feels like just kind of a natural space to just put some stuff. So maybe there's like some different layers to the actual tech itself. And then this can be like some, terms we use are like greebles. Greebles or nurnies are two words that we use, but this is basically like the surface of the Death Star, surface of Star
I was going to say
Destroyers.
the Millennium Falcon. I think a lot of
all
us learned the word greeble from reading
exactly.
about the Millennium Falcon.
Absolutely. So just kind of sketching in this stuff, and it's almost identical to the process I was using here. So as I go up levels, I'm looking for more interesting shapes, and I'm sketching in the details for where those could be. So I'm adding more information in general, and then filling that information with details.
Junkyard in Space says maybe the Banu have a thing that hangs off the back of their helmet to denote their trader status or something,
That's
social
cool.
status.
Yeah.
People.
So I'm going to try to do some, because their stuff is so organic, I'm trying to find some lines that could maybe go all the way through. So when we're working on art, the term that we would usually use for this is like rhythm, which sometimes means creating visual lines of interest that go through the entire piece. So if you're starting on, if there's an area of interest down here by the chin, I'm creating some lines that it can connect to exit at the top of the helmet, top back of the helmet. So maybe something like this.
Yeah.
And around this point, and that's maybe a little too harsh of a line, I think that I'm kind of starting to bisect this thing where it's like where you put it on and all the glass, which I'm not a huge fan of. So I might just kind of tie that back in or something. This area, for me right now, this area is not working, so I'll come back to that later. It's not. I always find it's important to not get too distracted in a certain area. So if you're getting stuck on something in art, move on and come back to it later. So just polishing up some of this. I kind of like that this doesn't feel very high tech, and I want to kind of start still feeling maybe a little puffy, like a little bloated, but I think the overall shapes are kind of getting there, and I want to get this helmet visor off as soon as possible.
JJ's adding a tablet
another
cam.
angle.
A tablet cam.
There we go. Oh. All right, I think overall shape-wise, that's kind of working for me. So I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to hide the existing one. So you can see we have version 1, version 2, and now we're going to work on version 3. And what I'm going to do on version 3 is there's a bunch of ways to do this, but I'm basically, I'm going to mask this section. So all of this.
So basically, whatever you mask won't get changed. You make larger sweeping changes without affecting a certain area.
Exactly. So I can mask the visor off. And this has options for like painting it or for doing different kinds of ways. And I'm overshooting, like I'm intentionally going over where I want it to go, because I'm going to separate this whole section. So I'm going to take that. I am going to make a polygroup. Polygroup is basically a fancy word of saying groups. So when I group by masked, you'll see that these become different colors. What I can do now is I can select them versus the inside versus the outside. I want to keep the inside or the outside, the glass here, and I'm going to split my. It's all one. So I'm group splitting, which basically means I have this section now and I have this section now, and they're actually completely different pieces. So I'm going to go back to this piece, and I'm going to delete it because I have my other one here. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do kind of the same thing, but I'm going to overshoot in this way.
Not generally one for a loss of words, but I do find whenever when we do these, I find myself for long periods of time
Just watching?
just watching.
I think that's just, I'm going to duplicate this first so I don't lose it. Group split. And then we have this piece. So it gets all jagged here because it's actually going off the lowest divisions of polygons, which is fine. And we have this jagged piece here that I'm going to delete. And now we basically have a nice clean piece and a nice clean piece. So I can start by removing the glass. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of carve this in. I could do it in some other ways where maybe maybe this will be the way to do it. You get a lot of questions whenever I'm doing these about, or teaching in general, about how to do a certain thing. And there's not really like the way to do it.
The way that works best for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I always find that, sometimes I'm working on a project or a character or whatever it is, and I'll have an idea of how I want to go about solving the problems that that character presents. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. So here what we're doing is we're just going to delete the rest of those items because I was just cleaning that up.
Dantastic, Mr. Fox. That would be telling. I'm not going to tell.
I am going to clay polish, I think. So this, there's some features within ZBrush that basically, you'll see it kind of cleans up the edges here. And it's also polishing those edges.
Jared, please, can you ask in a Bill Murray voice?
Oh, okay.
What's a...
No, go on.
I'm trying to I've never really thought of Bill Murray as having a particular voice. It's like, do people do Bill Murray impersonations?
I think like as maybe the Caddyshack. That was a big one.
Oh gosh,
Oh,
I haven't seen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
God, I haven't seen Caddyshack in forever. I haven't seen Caddyshack in a while. Just goes like Art Nouveau, best described New Banner style. I remember his lip, but I can't remember how he sounds.
Yeah,
it's been a long time since I've seen Caddyshack.
Same, from what I remember, that was going really well. So, I think you've got it. All right, going to continue to save. Some of the features in ZBrush, they're not unstable, but it's just they don't always give you results that you want. So what I'm doing here is an extract feature. Extract basically takes the entirety of the mesh and gives it a thickness.
Typhoni, is there any concept art for the helmet you're making? We are making concept.
Yeah, this is it.
This is what we call a 3D concept. So there is no prior art to this. You are watching the creation of a concept right now. Some artists concept in 2D, some artists concept in 3D.
So I'm playing with the settings here, which is basically, it's giving me a preview. So when I hit this, it's saying, do you want to do it on the whole helmet? I'm saying yes. And you'll see it's giving me this little layer on the inside. This is really great for anything that has a physical thickness that you'll see. So for us, with this, I'm just going to run with it and see what it looks like. So this is what I was using, and this is it probably put it at the bottom of my list.
We're about halfway through, by the way.
Oh, that's not bad.
No.
Where did it go? It's gone. It's gone. Extract. Okay. Accept. I think I forgot to hit that button.
Is it even a remote possibility that the end product of this design will eventually end up in the game itself? If he likes it and
Yeah, I think so.
Chris likes it and other people like it, that's the thing. If you're a subscriber, you have access to something called the subscriber vault, and in the subscriber vault you can see dozens and dozens and dozens of concepts for ships that didn't make it to Star Citizen Universe, or versions of ships that did, but versions that we didn't use. So, concepts, many concepts are created for any one particular design, and only one ever usually
only
gets
one makes
used.
it, yeah.
It's one of those things when you buy one of those Art of Star Wars books or whatever, people will see all kinds of, you can see 24 different variations of what eventually became Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And you're just like, oh wow, it's like so
I
many
love
different
that
designs.
one. That's the one I wanted. Or,
Exactly.
yeah. It's pretty common when you do concept art for movies, film, entertainment in general, especially on the art side. Like it's so common to just to do hundreds of iterations for one thing, and just kind of you have to accept as part of the gig, of part of what that job is, that only one's going to make it. So all your efforts and all your team's efforts are basically going to making the best possible thing. So is it possible that this helmet will go in? Yeah, it's totally possible. But we'll probably do plenty of other iterations on what a Banu helmet could look like before we really come to that
I love the offset
resolution. So I'm wanting to keep a little bit of an offset to make it feel like it's got something in there. Trying to see if maybe some little decorative lines or something can work.
One of the cool things, you end up creating so many concepts that can never see the light of day. One of the neat things recently about the Star Wars series Rebels was they went back to a lot of the unused Ralph McQuarrie concepts for the original Star Wars and made those concepts into characters. That was, Chopper was an old version of R2-D2. Zeb was an old version of Chewbacca. It was really cool to see them resurrect old concepts like that.
Yeah, it's actually hard sometimes because you get in production and you're like, we have one character and I like 3 of these options. Probably one reason, especially for costumes, you might see more costume changes.
In the segment we just did on Twitch Pacheco for yesterday's ATV, I saw 3 great designs for Twitch, if I'm allowed to have an opinion about that. And it's having to choose between the 3 is, sometimes it just really comes down to a coin flip. I think they're all great and they can all work.
Yeah, exactly.
But we can only do one.
So what I'm doing now, just because we're, limited on time, apparently I accidentally made a hole, so we'll deal with that. He's gonna be leaking. But I'm just gonna start kind of doing again the same process that we've already shown. So starting very, very rough, adding more detail, getting the shape to be finalized, and then here's this on top of this, but this is basically us choosing the shape, us defining the shape, and I'm adding, continuing to add more detail.
Yes, Quincy, I'm willing to confirm that Twitch Pacheco has a brother named YouTube. Go to Reddit, tell him I confirmed it.
Yeah, there you go. So some of the things that I actually want to do on this is I'm going to add some hard lines or some pinches. So what I'm going to do is actually choose our pinch brush. So certain brushes in ZBrush do different kinds of things. So you'll see when I actually use this, it actually takes the polygons and like draws them to an area. And so when it does that, it creates a very distinct shape. So it's really good at defining corners and stuff like this.
I don't want to distract you too much.
Yeah, go for it.
But talking about Twitch Pacheco, which is one of the first, I want to say, not principal, but fully realized female characters that we're seeing in the persistent universe. I'm seeing some questions about the female player character, which is scheduled to come online for 3.5. Is there anything, like a general update you can give us on that?
Yeah, right now it's definitely on track. One thing to note about the female player is that it's a massive feature.
Yes.
Obviously, we've been talking about it for a really long time, but the biggest thing about it is that there's so many different elements going into it, from all different kinds of things we're doing right now. So we're having to adjust our shops, for example. So our shops are being adjusted because now you have multiple genders to choose from. So what is that experience like? Our character customizers being overhauled because you have an additional gender. You have all the animations that are going to play, from just the basics of playing, all the gameplay stuff from shooting to flying ships to jumping. Every possible animation that you have is going to need to be there for the female. So I guess what I'm getting at is there's so much in that there will be some bugs. Like, there will be some visual bugs. Maybe an animation isn't perfect, or some of the animations we haven't had the time to make a female version, and so we've just batched over the male version and we're using that. So there's going to be some stuff that we want to iterate on through the rest, definitely of this year, and to get it to a more final state. But I think, for myself, looking at her as a feature, it's not worth a couple bugs of visual fidelity or shopping, to not
Put it off for another
put it off
character,
for
for another
another
quarter, right?
quarter, because you kind of get into this point of like, oh, at the end of this quarter, this thing would be nice to have in, and oh, okay, well, we'll wait for that thing at the end of this quarter, or so basically, like, for example, one of the big things is the female player is going to not have all of the clothing options that the male will have, because our tech team was hit very hard this quarter on our DNA work and our shop work and our character customizer work. So they haven't had the time to skin stuff this quarter, not as much as we would have wanted them to, right? And that basically just means, like, they'll still have all the gameplay components and they'll be one-to-one there, but we had to make a choice of, is it nothing or...
Right. You're not. Yeah. I just want to be really super clear on that. You're not
Sure.
saying that those options aren't coming.
No,
it's
of
just
course, they're coming.
It's just that, like you said in the Pacheco segment in yesterday's ATV, pursuing that fantastic hair, for Pacheco.
Yes.
If it's not ready by 3.5, we're not going to let it stop us from putting Pacheco out in 3.5.
Exactly.
We'll give her a hood,
Yeah.
and get it
We'll
out.
find something else. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not that we're not going to do every armor 1.1 and all these clothes 1.1. It's just we're going to do as many as we can up to the release of 3.5,
Yes.
and then put it out with what's ready,
Yeah.
and then continue to iterate on it after that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now, the female will have all of the armors that the male has. So as far as what we're kind of calling gameplay clothing, where the armor has more gameplay, you can store weapons, you can do things in it, you can go in space, will be one-to-one. Yeah. So that's something that we've definitely focused on.
Well, that was one of the tenets of moving to this quarterly date-based release system.
Absolutely.
Was we were no longer going to wait until we had everything to put something out. It's we hit these quarterly releases, and we push out with what's ready
Exactly.
to push out.
So in 3.5, we'll have a set of release for the female, and then in 3.6, I can guarantee we'll have more.
Ken Dathler says, if Pacheco's hair isn't ready for 3.5, I want to see her outright flaunting her hair in 3.6.
We will try that for sure.
Add a whole new animation.
Yeah, there you go. The hair flip. Cool. So I think I'm starting to get some overall shapes for like this thing, for this part kind of working. He's got a little bit of a blinders issue here.
Yeah. Chad has mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah. So maybe we just pull that back.
Which actually is a good seg to a notion. Not everything has to be everything.
Sure.
It's one of those. There's a conceit that's very easy to fall into, where every ship has to be able to do everything. Every armor has to be ideal for every situation.
Yeah.
It's in building a living, breathing universe that matches our own in as many ways as we can anyway. You want strengths and weaknesses to any given ship. You want strengths and weaknesses to any given piece of armor. You know, sometimes things in the real world are made for more form over function, and sometimes things are made for more function over form. And I think reflecting that in the game is a vital aspect of making this seem like a living, breathing universe.
I agree.
You should see a helmet that goes, oh, this has terrible visibility off to the side.
Yeah.
Like that should exist.
But if you want that choice, you make that choice. I think one of the things that kind of to tangent off that is, I think it's also accommodating to styles. So, you know, some people, you know, whenever we release a new armor set or a new set of clothing, I personally see what everybody's using, what they like and what they don't like. And, you know, for me, I've seen like comments on some stuff where it's like, oh, I love this, and some are like, I hate this. And so whenever I see those comments, as long as they're in contrast to each other, I feel like it's still a success. So if we say, you know, we released, I saw some people bagging on some of the shipjacker armors because it's like, oh, you know, I don't really like that style or whatever. But then I saw a lot of people using them and loving them. And so for me, it's like, even if that content came out and a small handful of people really dug it, that's worth it, because that's who it was for. It was for the people that really dug it.
So he said there are no more helmets with no helmets in real life with bad side visibility. Yeah, there are. Just off the top of my head, I'm picturing those. Remember those old, like, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea deep sea diver helmets that just had a little window right there?
Little tiny thing. Yeah, those are classy. So I'm just going to define some real quick shapes because we've got like 20 or so minutes left, right? Maybe run this through here. So just continuing to, you know, slowly iterate on the shapes. As you rotate around, you find things that work, you find things that don't work. This also has a cool feature where I can select the inside. So this is just, we're seeing through it, but I can like mask this. And if I wanted to do something fancy, I could like get in here and say like, oh, this is all the padding for it.
Right.
So if I want to even, let's see, how would I select this? I will grow this selection. So I can like grow based on where we were. So maybe to the inside of like a helmet like here is all metal or some other type of material. And then the rest of it, I can fill with a padding. So even back here, maybe.
I don't know why I was thinking of one of those like reversible M1A jackets that are orange on the inside, like a reversible helmet.
Yeah,
So
there you
it's
go.
a giant orange helmet.
You can always color stuff too. I actually personally enjoy that, working in color as soon as possible. So yeah, we could do, you know, if we want to do like an orange, and we fill the object with that color. So then we go back to white, you'll see that like, oh, the inside of this is now kind of orange and the outside is a different color. Yeah. So we can play around with that as much as we feel like we like. And I kind of like this gray maybe, so we invert that color, fill that, and then we can go back to white and we can see that this is the start of sort of the helmet design or shape. And then maybe you can even paint in color here. So what we'll do is we'll just paint like a black, maybe black while we're sculpting. So I'm adding, this means I'm sculpting and this means I'm painting. So I'll be able to paint and sculpt at the same time and just kind of do like a little.
Proudly Gamer says, do you normally work on a tablet like that or directly on a touch-sensitive monitor?
I prefer tablet actually. A lot of the artists here use Cintiqs, which is the sensitive monitors. There's other brands and stuff. Wacom is the biggest one. I like to use a tablet because it sounds weird, but my hand gets in the way. So I don't like having...
The visual obstruction.
Yeah, like if you were to draw like where my cursor is, like my hand would be on it, which is fine, but I just prefer for it to not be there. So just kind of fill in this orange real quick.
I was joking about that M1A orange Padding inside.
We went for it.
I used to have one of those jackets as a kid. I should get one again.
Cool. So we got this. This is our color picker. It'll preview all the colors on everything else. So kind of see where that's at. The other thing we can do is we can start, since I pulled that back for the blinders, the mesh doesn't fit anymore.
Right.
So I got to fix that. And this is actually very, similar to the feedback process that you get when you work. So it's like, hey, an iterative approach of we tried something, we couldn't see out of the helmet or whatever the issue is, right? Like or this feels weird. Actually very, very similar. Gonna level that up, make sure it's kind of fitting. Maybe I'll put like something that's a little more interesting detail, so it's like lining up with it rather than feeling like it's.
Somebody in the chat asked if you've ever designed in VR.
I have never designed in VR. It seems pretty cool from what I've seen, but I have never.
My face
tried
would get
it.
sweaty.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really good work off of it though, so I would like to at some point. Seems like it'd be a fun experience for sure. Even if it doesn't work for your workflow, I think it to maybe put you in a different perspective or frame of mind, or might be a good way to like change up your workflow.
The very first VR thing I ever did was a recreation of the Battle of Endor,
Oh yeah,
and it just pops you into a X-wing
Yeah.
approaching the Death Star, and I just couldn't stop. I kept spinning behind me and looking at R2. I'm like, R2's behind me. And all my friends are sitting in my living room just laughing their ass off. And I'm like, R2 is right there behind me.
like we know. All right, so just fixing this little piece here. And then I kind of want to get some different materials on here. So in ZBrush, you have all different kinds of different materials that you can play with, and it just like changes it to be different things. This is kind of interesting, so I'll just select this item here, and I'm going to fill it with this material. So as we did it before, you can see when I go back here.
Starting to get a Cobra Commander.
There you go, very Cobra Commander
here.
for you. There's not a great way in ZBrush to do transparency, unfortunately. So you have to toggle some stuff on and off to make that happen. I think that was actually a little too Cobra Commander, so I'm probably going to go with this one and fill it again. So it's just got a little bit of a shine to it. So we can kind of start to see the difference of what those two things look like. And I'm going to play with this off and on quite a bit. So maybe I want to, so you'll see like the reflections on this are, they're not too bad. It's pretty good. But if I did something like put a little crease in it, like it doesn't, see, you can still do this. It happens all the time, right? But you put a little crease in there and the reflections start getting really jagged, which can be cool because it'll create like an interesting shape. And we even have some of our helmets in the game that have elements of this in it, even if it's subtle. Of like, sometimes we'll take a like a line like this, maybe.
Right. Like the Explorer suit.
Yeah, I think the
RSI
Explorer has
Explorer
like kind of struts that run through here, everybody's favorite thing. And then we have like some.
Yes, I love that. We took the RSI Explorer suit and we put struts on the helmet.
Yeah. It was that was a fun suit because it was sort of one of those ones that had been in the marketing stuff before, and so reinventing it to kind of fit.
Yes, no strut shaming here.
No stretch shaming, right? So I'm actually going to take this area. It's kind of hard to see because it's all gray. So we'll turn this off. And maybe we push it in. What is happening? What is happening? So we can like do little accessories or something. So maybe it's not a strut, but it's just got a little bit of a inset in it or something. So that we can, even though this would all be glass, maybe there would be, in a lot of glass kind of things you can see, they'll have like maybe some rubber that would like be a little trim right here.
Right.
So it's sort of a strut, but it's just a little thin thing that on the inside of the helmet you'd probably never see. And this guy, it's kind of adding back to where we had those visibility problems, but it's like those glasses you have sometimes, and they have little side windows on the glasses. You ever seen those? Like, I have some of those. Still live for my grandmother. But, you know, you get a little bit of little visibility back. So kind of like that, but I don't know if that's very Banu.
We also don't know what kind of peripheral vision Banu have in general. Like,
a good call.
It could be that the side blinders on the helmet don't impact the vision at all because vision's already impacted by terrible peripheral vision for the Banu. So they would opt for more protection to the sides since they can't see out of the sides anyway.
I can buy into that.
We don't know.
Just kind of fill in some of this out. See, and maybe we have.
And it could have motion-based vision for all we know, like a T-Rex.
Oh, I love that. I like that idea. So you can do, you see this kind of stuff a lot where it's like maybe there's little etchings on the helmet or something that sort of continues to define the shape.
Do Banu have terrible hearing? Someone in the chat said that. I don't remember that. It's possible.
Possible. We could, you know, maybe they need like little hearing speakers. Right, you can add like little details in there. And that's the kind of the fun stuff. I feel like their designs would be a little simpler overall, just because I think the organic nature leads to that, rather than having like all kinds of crazy details.
They're saying according to the lore, Banu have bad hearing.
Oh. I did not actually know that.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, that's good. I wonder if it was in like a...
Might have been a lore builder or a
yeah,
colleague
lore
or
builders.
something.
So fill this up with some little details. So I'm trying to balance out the overall shapes and then start placing details. I don't really want to go in and like detail, just like start going crazy on this.
Right.
Because first off, it's hard to control from a sculptural standpoint where stuff is. But I kind of just want to like put it where it should go, where it feels like it needs to go, rather than just peppering the whole thing. And kind of getting back to what we were talking about earlier, we can talk a little bit about how they would put it on. So right now I don't know if you can really put it on. So maybe if you were to put this thing on, I'm going to imagine that this is like something he's wearing already.
Yeah, like a neck sock.
Yeah.
Like a sock you pull over first.
I think we kind of already have one of those. Let's see. Kind of have one. What if we just use that one? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to push this part of the mesh in. We'll see how far that goes.
I think you answered your question with your question, Tarkov. Because they're not human.
So if we push this in, I can use the existing sculpt that I've already used. And then I'm going to take this.
Just some happy little pushes.
It's like, okay, so if this thing's going on this guy's head, it's probably going to go like this. This is like as big as his head is, so it probably needs to go somewhere here. Which means if we want to get serious about it, all this needs to come off. Or this is all pads. So like if you wear, if there's any motorcyclists out there, or anybody's worn those types of helmets before, it can be deceiving when you do models because you could say, you know, oh, well, his head can't fit through here, but if we made all this like padding or something that could be padding, even if, you know, we say all the way to like here, this is all pads, we could do something like that. That would be compressed when he actually wears it. So in a mesh like this, we're not, you know, able to dynamically simulate him putting a helmet on and off. But we can get like some rough sizing in there and make sure we feel like it's going to work. And now that we've had to do that, it's also creating some kind of interesting shapes that we can play up in the back. So maybe even though that is where I said his head would need to go in, let's make it a little smaller. Kind of like the idea of all of this being pads though. So I'm turning up the intensity of my brush, which basically makes those lines more intense.
Comes a giant kind of thing.
Push all of this in. And just I kind of like the idea that there's some area here that's very clearly defined as like where it's attaching.
Right.
And then we got this piece, we got this piece. I think. Yeah, I think that's kind of getting there.
Yeah.
As far as a spaceman, space Banu. I don't know, I feel like this probably could use a hard line on it. It's a little just dome-like. I feel like I love that idea. It's just such a large canopy. And it's hard to tell sometimes. That's why we do a lot of tests in engine. Because this might look great. You know, if this is all glass, it might actually work pretty well.
It's hard to tell without the transparency.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're basically like, is this gonna look goofy or is this gonna work?
You had a mode where we kind of saw the face through the.
Yeah, if we do this, we can
before
kind of
there.
see it.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like it's gonna be fine. The only thing that I'm noticing now is like,
That's
this dude's got no clearance here. So I just grab this piece. Maybe give him. And that's kind of why it's interesting with the different races is some of them, they're gonna have different requirements on like what their needs are for space. So he doesn't feel like he's jammed right up against this thing. And we can't keep going out because then it makes the helmet look ridiculous. So
We come from France.
yeah. So, you know, we're just finding a way. You got to make it look good at as many angles as you can. So changing the overall proportions of the visor might give us something like that. But now we've got all this free space in here, and like that immediately to me is like, okay, we should put something
like
in
maybe-
there.
Or maybe taper back in towards the eyes. Or...
Like I'm almost just like appending. I'm just append a cube. It's gonna be in the wrong spot, but. Okay. So this is gonna be quick.
We're out of time, but I want to see what you're doing. So.
I'm basically just going to put like a little, let's say we could have a little lens thing here. Oh, that's huge. Oh, God. A harmonica. It's also inverted. But let's pretend that this is like on the inside of this helmet. It's like a little readout or something maybe.
Rear view camera.
Yeah, review camera, or like, he's got a little stuff in there. We want to make sure that's still hidden, obviously, so it needs to be inside all of this. Probably a little skinnier. So we could do this. Double, cool. And just kind of jam it in there. So we could, and this could actually probably be cooler if it was like all the way around. Push that in, and then we'll hide this. So there's some sort of little readout here that he's like, can look down at, or maybe, and it's inside his lens. And so we could have, some fun stuff here where whatever this shape is, maybe it's stuck to the helmet, maybe it's part of the glass itself, or maybe it's even like a readout that's on the glass. It's like a transparent thing. It's like his messages or something. It's his chat window. But it'd be hidden all inside.
It only shows up when he presses F11.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah.
All right. It's Banu's version of Moby Glass. It's Moby Face.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. I think that could be kind of cool to have a little thing that's just chilling in there. And I think this would actually work because then it's got a unique shape to it. It's kind of definitely different. I think if you saw somebody with this type of helmet, like from a distance, this is one thing we talk about a lot, but we talk about like
The silhouette.
silhouette reads. So it's kind of got a little bit of a bigger shape to it. So from a distance, I think it would help identify what race these
That's
guys
a
are.
Banu. Well, cool. Josh, that's it for our time.
Sweet, thank you.
Thank you.
No, of
Thank
course.
you so much for doing this. Yeah, that's it. RTV game dev. What makes a helmet? Thanks for joining us, guys. I'm trying to remember. I totally forgot. I had an announcement. My computer went down halfway through the show, so I don't have my announcements. Oh, if you're in the Austin area next week, South by Southwest, a couple of our staff members are presenting at South by Southwest. John Erskine and Jake Ross are going to be at South by Southwest. They're doing a panel or two. I don't actually have the details, but you can go to South by Southwest, the website, and search for John Erskine and Jake Ross, and you can find out more about what they're talking about. John Erskine is the studio head for the Austin, Texas studio. So if you're already going or whatever, you want to swing by and say hi, I'm sure they'd certainly appreciate meeting some Star Citizens in the area. Other than that, the Argo SRV promotion is still going. So if you haven't checked that out, there's a Q&A and there's an ATV and there's an RTV and all kinds of information for that. And yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got for you. So Josh, thank you so much.
No problem. I'm just
And,
going to keep going as long as you keep talking.
No, I'm just, part of me is conditioned to wait for you to hit a button and for this to show up in a really inopportune place. So I think we're just going to, I think we're just going to stop the feed right now before that happens. JJ, kill the show. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See you.
Nope. Bye.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertsspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.